Hello and welcome to my little corner of the internet. My name is Sarah, also known as the Prairie Fiber Witch. I use that name here on YouTube, on Instagram, and also Ravelry. And welcome to my little piece of the internet where I am going to talk about knitting. I don't know about calling things podcasts anymore. I don't know. Anyway, here I am. I'm going to talk to you about my sweater that I'm wearing today. Let me sort of show it off here. So this is a Parisian Dream sweater by Mina that I made 3 years ago now in 2020. And I made this out of hand-spun yarn that I also spun. I do spin, although I don't do it that often to be able to show it off all the time, but when I spin, I will share it. So what's this? Okay, so this is actually like a cropped version of the sweater. I knit one fewer repeats on the body than is called for in the pattern because I am short. And actually, I like how it turned out kind of cropped. And I think I also changed the sleeve decreases because my arms are quite short. They ended up being kind of bracelet length on me, but I still really love this sweater and wear it a lot. A little about spinning the yarn for this. I got the fiber from Custom Woollen Mills here in Alberta, which is, there are two major Canadian wool mills. There is Briggs and Little that's in the New Brunswick in the East Coast, and then Custom Woollen Mills that's here in Alberta, and I love both places. One summer we went on a road trip down to Custom Woollen Mills, and we went on a mill tour, and I would highly recommend that because they have their mill equipment is like 150 years old, and they're still using it and still in good condition. They process wool from they've got pickers, they dye the wool, and then they card it. So they do a woolen preparation, which means they card the wool. They have all these cool carding machines. They also make these big, basically mattress-sized carded batts that they use to make wool comforters with, and you can also get a wool pillow, which I have a wool pillow from them, which I love. And yeah, it was just a really fun tour. And at the mill they have a shop, and I saw this giant 1 pound bat, and I can't remember, I think it was $40 or something like that, and it was just this big sheet of fiber. It was sort of meant for wet felting to make a big piece of fabric that could be used for making a garment or something like that, or some sort of art piece. But I was like, I'm gonna spin that. So I stripped it into, I think, 2-ounce bits, and then spun each one. I spun it with long draw, so woolen preparation and woolen spun. I made a 3-ply, and yeah, and then in the finishing of the yarn, I sometimes shock the yarn, so putting it in, transferring it from hot water to cold water and back again a few times, and then, snapping it and thwacking it, and it helps slightly full or felt the yarn a little bit. It's supposed to help with pilling, and I have never de-pilled the sweater, and I have worn it pretty solidly for 3 years, so it's held up pretty well. Yeah, maybe one day I'll spin yarn for another sweater, in which case I will share the process. All right, since last time I have finished a couple of the whips that I shared, so we'll go over that. The first thing that I finished is this pair of socks. Yeah, so basically I think last time when I showed them, I just had this heel left to go. I think I had just started it. I can't remember. It was 1.5 heels. I don't remember. Anyway, they're done now. And you can see I didn't quite have enough yarn to finish both heels, so I found this brown that's kind of close. And most of the time my socks are in shoes, and I don't mind them looking a little like patchy and homemade. I think that makes them quirky and fun. So I will describe, so what do I do when I knit these socks? This was some yarn that I got from Tiny Human Knits. She was very kind enough to include this bonus skein in a package that I had bought, I think, of her winter yarns last year over around Christmas time. I often just order a 50-gram skein from her because my feet are a US size 6 or about a 36, 37 in European size. So I can make a pair of socks for my feet out of 50 grams of yarn. And like, it's easy. This construction method is really easy to just pop in some contrast, which is always fun. So what I do with these is I start by knitting a tube. So I start at one end and I knit a few stripes of ribbing. And then I basically knit the stockinette tube all the way down to the other end until I have 3 or 4 stripes left. And then I will knit ribbing it on the other side, and then I will have a complete tube. At that point, I will go back, find the midpoint in my stripes, usually at like in between 2 stripes. You can see here, like one ends with the burgundy and it starts with the red. So I will have unraveled one. Sometimes I have to unravel one entire row. So sometimes I'll make it be like half of one color and half of another color to try and keep it balanced. But basically I put my 2 sock needles in first and pick up all the stitches. And then I will cut 1 stitch in the middle of the row that I need to unravel. And then I will unravel in both directions until they separate. At which point I can knit the toes. And these are, you know, good old wedge toe, which you can find in any sock pattern. And then I will measure and cut in for the heel of the sock, which is kind of like figuring out the same heel placement for when you're knitting a sock, either from the toe up or top down, just like where your heel needs to be. For this one, you can see I've split this one stripe in 2 to put the heel there. I think I did that on both socks, split a stripe. And again, you do the same thing, similar to putting in the toe, but this time only just half the stitches. You put in the sock needle, pick up all the stitches. The row in the middle is gonna get taken out, so I just cut a stitch in the middle and then unravel in both directions. And then I have all my stitches live and ready to go, and then I can just knit the heel, which is a slightly modified version of the toe. So basically I knit about 3 or 4 rows of straight stockinette before I start my decreases, and then I have a heel that I find fits pretty well. Not everybody likes the fit of an afterthought heel. I find it works better for me than like a short row heel, so I do still really like it. Although my #1 favorite heel is still a heel flap and gusset. But that doesn't really work with this kind of yarn construction. So yeah, so that's basically what I do for these afterthought. I call them afterthought everything socks, or like sock tube socks, tube sock kind of construction. And yeah, these have been sort of sitting around since the spring, simply because I don't need socks over the summer, so the motivation to finish them isn't really there. But now that it's been fall, although it hasn't really been wool sock wearing weather yet, but because it is coming, I have been motivated to have more socks, so I finished these. The other thing that I finished was this sweater that I started back in the spring when I was homesick for a long period of time. This is a DRK Everyday Sweater by Andrea Mowry. This is the second version of this pattern that I have knit. The other version is out of some Jamieson and Smith 2-ply jumper weight. This is out of Brooklyn, no, not Brooklyn. This is out of Briggs and Little Sport, which is like my ride or die yarn, which I'll explain in a second. And I think this sweater, the yarn was like, you know, $28 or something like that. That is why I love this yarn so much, is it's so affordable and it's 100% wool, and they've been making it for freaking ever. So I did talk about this one. The fiber came from Custom Woollen Mills, and this was spun in New Brunswick at Briggs and Little, which is the other major Canadian mill. And why do I love this yarn so much? Because it's been affordable for so long. Like when I first discovered natural fibers, like when I first discovered wool, and I first discovered like independent yarn stores as opposed to like going to Lewis Craft in the mall. It was in the early 2000s, and you could find this wool and it was still an affordable option at that time. And I think that, I mean, they've been making Briggs and Little for like 100 and some years at this point. And they purposefully try to keep it at an affordable price point for people. And it's like legendary in the Maritimes that you can like go to the gas station or go to a grocery store and buy yarn for your projects. So Briggs and Little makes a yarn. This is their sort of their finest gauge of yarn, the sport weight. They also make a version of this yarn with nylon in it that's intended for socks, for robust socks. They have like 30 or 40 colors in this yarn, including some like really brights. There's this, right now they have like a really bright purple that I kind of want to make something out of. And also they've had for many, many years, they've had a hunter orange in their collection in like all the different yarns, so that because one of the things people would make would be like a sweater for their loved one who would be out in the woods hunting. So like can you imagine knitting a safety garment? That's kind of, I don't know. I really geek out about that. Anyway, so it's a great wool. It is pretty hard wearing and it's dang affordable. Like even in this year of 2023, in my part of Canada, which it has to get shipped across the country, it's still like $7 or $8 a skein. Like that's what wool yarn can you find for that price in this economy? And you get 115 grams per skein. I have a skein right here. So the yardage is like amazing. And the price point, see, this one was $6.99. So this is a skein from a couple years ago. I think it's more like $7.99 now. Anyway, it's really good. So yeah, so I started this in the spring. I had the body all finished, and it just needed sleeves. And now that it's like, I feel like I've been aspirational in my sweater knitting because it hasn't really been sweater weather here yet. It's still I mean, the mornings are chilly, the evenings are chilly where it can be like 2 to 5 degrees Celsius. But then during the day, it's still getting to like 20 degrees. So you can't just wear a sweater all day, which I kind of hate. But there is still sweater adjacent times. So I was motivated to finish this. It does need blocking. I haven't blocked it yet, which is why I haven't shown it on myself yet. It does need like a good stretch. But overall, I'm really happy with this, and I'm excited to add it to my sweater pile that usually lives on this chair, if we're going to be honest. Okay, there's another thing that I finished that's like underneath this pile of stuff. I already recorded this video once, but then I remembered about it and I was like, oh, should I just put it at the end? And I was like, no, why don't we just start over? So I will. And this is a cross stitch project, which I finished last week. I think last week. I have to say this is a collaboration between my favorite like cross stitch designer and Spin Cycle Yarns, which actually got me to order something from Spin Cycle, which I never thought I would do, but here we are. And like, I love it. I finished it in a week. I started and finished it as soon as it arrived. Stitching black letter is so much fun. It's like one of my favorite things to stitch. And I freaking love, maybe that makes me like a grandma knitter, like, you know, I don't know. Like, yeah, I feel like a grandma knitter often these days, and this, maybe this like feminist reclaiming of the term spinster really appeals to me, but whatever, I did it. I'm, you know, Zennial generation crafter trash. And I found this frame at a local antique mall. So this is the original frame. I like going to the antique mall and getting frames because it's relatively inexpensive. And you can get like a cute kind of beat up frame that you wouldn't find otherwise for a reasonable amount of money. Like, I think this was less than $20 for this. And it's easy to just, you know, take out the back and put something else in. So, yeah, I'm excited to put that in there. And it does come with a hoop to frame it. You can kind of see like the big oval here. But I kind of like the look of having it in the frame better. And also then you get to see more of the cool ice dyed fabric, which was kind of the point of getting it from Spin Cycle, was because they had dyed the fabric. Yeah. And I also, my one addition whenever I cross stitch something is I always sign it. Can you see that there? So I do my initials and then also the year. So that's a fun one. So I do have to iron it and then cut out some foam core and actually frame it. Okay. So like, because I finished one sweater, I said that I could cast on 2 more. Well, I was thinking I was going to cast on 1 more, but then I just decided to do 2 because one of these is actually for my mother. She has been requesting a sweater like since the spring, so I guess it's her turn to have another one. She really likes cardigans, so I am knitting her another cardigan, which is actually another Deren cardigan because the last time I knit a sweater for her, which was a cardigan, the pattern that she picked out was bottom up, and then she didn't like the fit of the sleeves, and it's like, I can't go back and fix that because the sleeves were knit first. So we're doing a top-down one this time, or I'm doing a top-down. She's watching. This is some yarn from Ocean by the Sea. I don't remember the name of the base or the name of the color, and I don't have the tag with me. I'm not sure if they are actively dyeing anymore, so I don't know. Maybe you could find some on DStash. This might be, maybe it's the Quill base? I'm not sure. I think it's a lace weight single ply, and so I am actually holding it doubled. Right now I'm just working from the outside and inside of one skein that I had wound up, but once it's time, I'll add in, I'll work from 2 different skeins so it blends a little bit better. And this is like this soft yellow, although it looks more like a vanilla custard kind of color. It does have some little variegated bits that are coming out here and there, which are very subtle and very pretty. Yeah, so you can see so this design starts with the back. You knit a back piece, and then you pick up for these front pieces, and then you join it all together into one large piece, which is just one knit flat back and forth. And I'm kind of in the middle of a row, which is why it's all bunched up on here, but actually it doesn't show too badly. And I'm actually, this yarn held double is getting me exact gauge as written in the pattern, which is really cool. And this is a sweater that this is like my 5th version that I'm knitting of this sweater. I have 3 that are finished, one of which I wear all the time. And I happen to have the 2 other versions that I have on the needles are in the same bag. So this one's out of a single ply wool, and this one is out of cotton linen blend from Ritual Dyes. So this is, I'll show it to you anyway, even though I think I showed it on my whips thing, but since it's here. So this is my version number 4 of this Deren cardigan, which I just have a few more inches of the body on, and I think I've worked on it a little bit since you last saw it, although it probably looks about the same. I think I need to knit like 3 or 4 more inches of the body. And what can I say about this? I'm really excited to have this as a sweater, although at this point it's kind of a boring stage of the knitting process. You can see here I've got a few markers to try and motivate me. It's like, you're almost there, you're almost there. And I feel like this is a cardigan that I am going to get a lot of wear out of. The other version that I have of this sweater knit out of this yarn was my first version of the Deren, and I wear it, at this point, I wear it nearly every day, because it's a great, like, emotional support cardigan. I do work at a library, so, like, a cardigan is the unofficial part of my, it's like an unofficial, uniform, unofficial librarian uniform, and, yeah, this is the one that I wear all the time. It's in, like, a gold mustard color, too, and this lavender, I feel, would also be a good, a good contrast with a lot of the things that I have in my daily wardrobe. So I'm looking forward to having this version too. Maybe I should just drag it to work and work on it over my lunch breaks and my breaks for a little while so I can get the body done. And then I'll be remotivated with it. And yeah, so now I have 2 of these sweaters kind of at the same stage. Both of which, this one, so the Undine one, to get the same gauge is on the gauge called for is on a 3.25 millimeter. And then the wool version is on a 3.75 millimeter, which is a US 5. The 3.25 is a US 3. So I guess it's just, I don't know, because it's a cotton linen blend, it's a bit hard on the hands to work with. So I guess I knit looser with this yarn than I do with the wool, which has more elasticity. So those are my 2 Deren sweaters. Can you tell I've gotten my money's worth out of that pattern? I've also made, that's from the Embody collection by Jackie Cieslak. I have also made 2 dresses for myself from that pattern, that are the sewing pattern in that collection. And I've also made 2 tunics for my mom. So I've, really gotten my money's worth out of that pattern. I really enjoy that one. So the other part of my knitting math, of like, let's knit all the sweaters, is I started another Islander sweater. And this is a pattern by Skeindeer Knits. And you can see in the version that's, I have knit the sweater once before as well. And this one, the one in the pattern here is like, undyed, cream with a black. And I think, what yarn does it call for? It's a Hillesvåg Vilja lamb's wool is what it calls for. And so I have previously knit that sweater. The version that I made was like a pale gray with like a teal as the pop of color. And I wear that sweater a lot in the winter. I really like it. And I saw a version of it in a TV show on a sailor, like 18th or 19th century sailor. And I can't remember if it was like Our Flag Means Death or that one about the Shackleton exhibition, not exhibition, expedition. There you go. I can say words. That was sort of reversed. So it was a black with a white pop of color. The closest thing I had in my stash was this gray that is dyed with walnut shells. So that's what we're going with for now because I wanted to start it immediately. Because I finished something, I wanted to start something immediately. And this is using Luddite yarn from her Home and Garden collection. And it is called Steel Gray. It is it's called a fingering weight 1 ply, but I find it's very comparable to Briggs & Little Sport, which is the cream that I'm using. And for 100 grams, 4 ounces, you get 430 yards. And it is 90% Dorset wool from Pigeon Lake and 10% Black Welsh Mountain crossed with Dorset wool from Innisfail, both of which are here in Alberta. So I'm holding that, or I'm stranding that along with some Briggs & Little Sport this one is called Washed White. I think I showed it to you a little earlier. And yes, at this point I just have like, this is my favorite yarn, my favorite kind of base. So I have this both from like Luddite yarns and Custom Woollen Mills or the Briggs & Little's version. I have a fair amount in my stash. So here we are. So far, I have finished the shaping at the top. This sweater looks funny because there's steeks in it. That's why it's kind of all bunched up like that. You have a steek at the front here for the neck shaping. So it does have like a high crew neck. And then there's a steek for either sleeve. So I won't be able to try this on. I will have to rely on gauge. For this version, I am knitting a larger size than I knit before. Do I have it on this page? Yes. So I think before I knit like the 49-inch bust, and this time I am knitting the 51-inch bust. My actual bust size is 44 inches, but I usually like at least 4 inches of ease. This time I'm going for 51 because that's closer to, I'm hoping for closer to the fit of this sweater since it's a similar kind of construction method. It has, you know, like the drop shoulder boxy construction. So I'm hoping for something that's a little bit more like this. And I might knit it cropped again like this one, just because I like I said earlier, this is like one of my favorite sweaters. So let's make another one that's similar to it. I don't think that I have enough of the gray yarn to be striping it like this, but I'm doing it anyway. So I will probably have to make some creative design choices at some point. Yeah, I only have the 2 skeins, so we will see how far I get with those 2 skeins. I'm hoping to at least get the body of the sweater in the one color. If I end up with, once I'm finished the body, with a significant, and I might also leave it for the ribbing to do with a contrasting, well, either contrasting or a coordinating color that is visibly different so it looks more intentional. The other thing that I might do, if I do have a significant amount of this left after doing the body, is I might split it in half and then use it for as much as a sleeve that I can and then introduce a new color. And I might try and find a gray that just looks like kind of a different dye lot, because I don't think Kalea has any more of this yarn. So we're gonna get creative. So I'm either gonna get something that looks like similar-ish, so it just looks like a dye lot difference, or I might make it a little bit more jarring. It's like it needs to be a little bit more different so that it feels like a decision and not just you ran out of yarn. But, you know, I'm going to run out of yarn, so we're going to get creative. And like I did on the socks here, it's okay for it to look a little bit visually off, because why not? Like, it's a little visually off, but, like, is it so off that it's disruptive? I don't know. We'll see how I feel about it. Maybe it'll just be a sweater vest. I'll make that decision later. For right now, I'm really enjoying knitting it. Okay, what else have I been working on? I mean, otherwise, I would be working on that sweater solidly, except for I started a pair of socks here that I'm also really excited about. I'm also motivated to continue with these socks and finish them because Mackenzie of M to the Third is having a Socktober knit along in her Discord group, which I am participating in, and she's got some groovy prizes for that, so I am motivated to finish. So what am I doing here? I am knitting some fluorescent stripy socks. Maybe it's out of character for me, maybe it's not, I don't know. I get to set the rules, but I'm making bright socks. It's not, generally my palette is kind of more muted, but I like to have fun socks, what can I say? These are some skeins of Lang Ya wool that I purchased either this year or last year during trips to Montreal. And yeah, I really like bright sock yarn. Some of my favorite socks are actually some fluorescent, I think it was the Socks Yeah by Coop Knits. I knit some little shorty socks out of a skein of that, and I really like them, so that's why I'm making more bright socks. And I do really like a self-striping sock yarn, but it's also one of my favorite things to just stripe two yarns to make something. This is something that goes back to like my knitting roots, along with using the Lang Ya wool. I think it's part of my like grandma knitting status that I like am one of those people who I learned to knit when I was like 6 or 7. And though I did not knit my entire childhood, I did knit off and on throughout my childhood, and then once I sort of rediscovered / reclaimed knitting during my undergraduate degree in the early 2000s, that's when I sort of started knitting with a fury, I would say. And that's also when I talk about like having discovered wool and independent yarn stores, and really like met other knitters. That's the part that motivated me, was like meeting other knitters and talking about knitting in a big way. So up until that point, I was just sort of like knitting by myself. So the Lang Ya wool is actually the first official sock yarn that I ever used to make socks that were actually intended to be a pair of socks to wear on my feet, as opposed to just making for the sake of making. And grabbing 2 colors and striping it is something that I used to do as a kid. Once I discovered that that's how you striped things, and also that you could knit stuff in the round, I just like knit everything stripey because it was easy to grab 2 balls of I don't know how much yarn and then end up having enough for like a mitten or something, for a pair of mittens. Yeah, mittens and hats and scarves is what I used to knit like all the time. And then yeah, I remember the first sock that I ever knit was like, I think when I was 12. I grabbed a sock pattern and I grabbed a random skein of yarn, and I had found some double points that my mom had, and I was like, okay, this is how we knit in the round. It was like, and I just knit a sock, and it wasn't intended to fit anybody or to be a pair. It was just simply because I wanted to know how to make a sock, and so I did. And also, like, I wish I still had it to show you, but like, it was also a lacy sock. It wasn't like a stockinette sock. So don't let anybody tell you that you're not qualified to do a knitting pattern, because, you know, you can start on hard mode if you really want to. Like, you're the boss of your knitting. Anyway, that's my little soapbox ended. I have one sock finished and I've started the second sock this morning. So what I'm doing is, you can see on this side a little bit better, but I'm just carrying the yarns all the way down and switching every 6 rows from one color to the other. I did end up, when I first knit this, I had knit a complete stripe of the pink before putting in the heel, but then I was like, oh wait, I'm going to end up with a really big pink stripe in the middle, so I went back and then split the stripe in 2 so that I'd have a little bit on either side of the heel. And the reason that the toe is pink is simply because once I got to this point, it was long enough for my foot, so I just started, it was time for pink and time for a toe, so the toe became pink. It'll be a good way to sort of balance out the 2 yarns. And it'll be easy to knit the second sock because I can just count the stripes instead of having to count rows, so it'll be easy to make them the same. These are also, okay, so I'm using a 2mm needle, or a US size 0, which is also the size I used for these other socks. And I knit 72 stitches because I have wide feet. Wide but short feet. So those are coming along. And I don't really follow a sock pattern anymore. I've knit so many socks that I kind of don't need to. I have written down the numbers of how many stitches I need for a heel for like the different sizes that I usually knit socks. But yeah, basically the number of stitches that you do for the heel is half the total number of the socks. And then for the length of the heel, I know how many rows that I like to do, but usually it's like you count the number of slip stitches up the side of your heel, and that will also be half the number of half the stitches of the sock. That's the like proportion of it. If that wasn't confusing enough. So I'll just give you some actual numbers. For a 72 stitch sock, I work the heel over 36 stitches. And then I work 18 slip stitches on the side. Although should it be 18 or should it be 16? If you follow that previous one and my math is a little off, whatever. I do 18 slip stitches. I don't know if that gives me a little bit more room in the heel or not. It's what works. And then the heel turn itself is one that I copied down from a pattern that I like. I believe it's from the Rose City Roller, or the How I Roll pattern from Mara Catherine Briner. If you're looking for simple instructions for socks, hers are good. The only thing I do is like you can add ribbing to that, and then you've got like a standard sock. Her instructions are pretty good, and the How I Roll pattern has both toe up and top down construction for a heel flap and gusset. So if you're looking for good sock pattern, I like that one. Okay, so that's my Socktober socks, which I am motivated by prizes to finish. And then these are another pair of socks that I think I mentioned, but I didn't actually have to show you during my whips video. Or here. I have the sock blockers right here. Why don't I just use them? Okay. We will take a little intermission while I put these socks on the sock blockers. Ta-da! Okay, and then I'll do this other one. It's almost finished anyway. Might as well look a little tidier. Oops. If there's no toe, it's easier to pull it up too high. Ta-da! Socks. So these ones I've called my Lavender Menace socks. And for these, the reason you haven't seen them yet is they were living in my locker at work. I brought them home because I ran out of the lavender yarn that I was using. But I have since this week, I got a replacement on another skein to be able to finish. And this is again some more wool that I bought in Montreal. This is like my favorite color right now. Well, not just right now, for many years. I mean, since I made this sweater. I was trying to be chill about this sort of lavender mauve color and not make so much with it. But this year I've decided it's okay to dress head to foot in your favorite color. So now I need socks. I have some shoes that are this color. I'll need the socks to go with it. I've got pants. I have a t-shirt in this color, and I have the sweater. So forthcoming will be an entire lavender day outfit reel at some point. So I have another skein of this. I believe this is leftover from a sock set that I got from Mackenzie of M to the third, which I used to put in these stripes. The idea being that if I had these stripes, I could get more of a leg and be able to make socks out of 50 grams. You can tell that I failed because I had to buy a second skein of this yarn, but I'm not angry about it because it's my favorite color. If you're curious about color information, that's it there. I think they call it like soft mauve or something. I think there's like soft mauve and then like a dark mauve, and both of them are good. And the dark mauve I have upstairs, I believe. So yes, there will be more lavender mauve socks in my future knitting projects. Yeah. So now that I have this yarn, I can finish these socks, and I just have the toe to go. So maybe I will do that soon. Maybe I'll take it back to work and work on it during my breaks, and maybe that'll just get done. All right. I think that's officially everything that I've worked on in the past little while. Has it been 3 weeks? Has it been a month? I don't remember. And I hope you don't mind that I'm not keeping track. So yeah, so that's everything that I've been actively working on, things that I've randomly started. And yeah, thanks again for everybody who's checked out my past couple videos. I'm really excited that you guys seem to enjoy what I've been posting, so it is motivating me to continue. So yeah. I do read the comments. If you feel like you want to say hi or have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I do try to put detailed notes in the description box, but if you ever have a question about something, feel free to ask. And yeah, thank you so much for being with me today, and I'll see you next time.